When I was 10 years old, my cousin and I went to the same elementary school. He had a classmate named Liam. Liam's family was well off. His dad, Mr. Henderson, drove a sleek black SUV and offered us a ride to school every single morning for months. Rain or shine, he was there. He never complained. My grandfather, a man of old-fashioned values who spent his days tending to his orchard, felt we were imposing. To show his gratitude, he put together a heavy gift basket, freshly picked apples, homemade jam, and some local honey. He asked me to drop it off at the Hendersons' place one Saturday afternoon. I'd been there once with my cousin. They lived on the outskirts of town in one of those old 6-story brick apartment buildings. No elevator, just endless flights of concrete stairs. I didn't think much of it at the time. I just wanted to get the job done. It was a late autumn afternoon. The sky was the color of a bruised plum, heavy with clouds that seemed to touch the rooftops. The wind had a sharp, icy bite to it. As I walked toward the building with that heavy basket, I practiced what I'd say. I had no idea that a simple errand was about to turn into a nightmare. The building was ancient. The brickwork was crumbling, and the hallways were narrow and suffocating. As I started the long climb to the 6th floor, I realized most of the motion sensor lights were dead. The ones that did work flickered with a sickly yellow glow for a few seconds before plunging me back into darkness. The only sound was the rhythmic thud-thud-thud of my own sneakers echoing against the concrete. Felt lonely. Finally I reached the 6th floor. Apartment 6B. The dark wooden door was weathered, the nameplate slightly crooked. I knocked. The sound felt unnaturally loud in the silence of the top floor. Nothing. No footsteps. No muffled TV. No smell of cooking. Just dead silence. I knocked harder, my knuckles beginning to ache. Still nothing. Felt like an empty tomb. After waiting for nearly 10 minutes, the chill of the hallway began to seep through my jeans. I figured they must be out for the day. Frustrated, I turned around to head back down. I was halfway between the 5th and 4th floors when a voice sliced through the air. "Come back up. We're all home." Froze. My heart did a violent somersault in my chest. My hands, cold moments ago, were suddenly slick with sweat. The voice was wrong. It wasn't a man's or a woman's. It was thin, weightless, and completely devoid of emotion. It sounded like it was drifting down from the ceiling, but at the same time, it felt like someone was standing right behind me, whispering into my hair. I stood there, paralyzed. My brain was a mess of fear and logic. Did I miss them? Were they just in the back room? But I'd been at the door for 10 minutes. And that voice. It didn't sound like Mr. Henderson or his wife. It sounded like something trying to imitate a person. Thinking of my grandfather's strict instructions about being polite, I forced myself to turn around. I gripped the basket and climbed back up. Every step felt heavier. The air in the stairwell felt thick and freezing. I could hear my own ragged breathing, and beneath it, a faint shuff-shuff-shuff sound. Like someone or something was following me, keeping pace exactly one flight below. Back at 6B, I knocked frantically. "Mr. Henderson." "Liam." "It's me, I brought something for you." Silence. Only the echo of my own voice. I leaned my ear against the wood. It wasn't just cold. It felt like ice was radiating from the door. My fingers touched the wood and I recoiled. Felt like sticking my hand into a freezer. I was done. I turned to bolt, but then I saw it. At the end of the hallway, by the window overlooking the street, a massive shadow flickered. It was huge, nearly blending into the gray light of the afternoon. It didn't have a clear shape, just a dark, hulking mass that vanished the moment I looked directly at it. Ran. As I hit the stairs, something caught my foot. I stumbled, nearly tumbling down the flight. I looked down. There was nothing there, just a few dead leaves. But the force that had tripped me felt real. Like a hand reaching out to grab my ankle. I didn't care about the basket anymore. I sprinted. The lights flickered on and off as I passed, creating a strobe light effect. I could hear it behind me now, the sound of fabric rubbing together. Wish, wish, wish. It was close. Too close. I reached the third floor when the voice came again. It was right behind my ear this time. Voice. Leave the basket. Leave it here. The voice was flat, but there was a strange, hungry urgency to it. I nearly lost my footing. I grabbed the handrail to steady myself, and my skin crawled. The metal felt wet and sticky, like it was coated in something thick. I looked down, but the rail looked perfectly clean. I burst through the heavy front door and out into the street. The biting wind felt like a warm embrace compared to the tomb I had just escaped. When I got home, my grandfather knew immediately something was wrong. I was pale, shaking, and couldn't get a full sentence out. After he gave me some tea and calmed me down, I told him everything. His face went grim. He told me I was never to go near that building again. Not even to walk past it. The next day, my cousin asked Liam if they were home on Saturday afternoon. Liam looked confused. No, he said. We went to visit my aunt in the city. We left at 8 a.m. and didn't get back until midnight. The apartment was empty all day. I felt a chill go from my toes to my scalp. If the Hendersons weren't home, who invited me in? What was the shadow by the window? What was tripping me on the stairs? For weeks afterward, I couldn't sleep. I'd see shadows moving in the corners of my room. I'd hear that weightless voice whispering, "Come back up," just as I was drifting off. I lost my appetite. I was exhausted. My grandfather finally took me to see an old woman in the valley who knew things. She didn't do a ceremony, but she gave me a small sachet of herbs and told me that some places are just hungry. That the building was built on old ground where the shadows liked to linger. They weren't necessarily evil, she said, but they were lonely. They saw a bright, living soul and wanted to keep it. Eventually the feelings faded. We moved away a year later, and I never saw that brick building again. I've tried to rationalize it as a childhood hallucination, but I know what I felt. I know the cold of that door and the stickiness of that railing. Some calls should never be answered. And some doors should never be knocked on twice. Thank you for listening. If you've ever had an experience where a voice called out to you in an empty house, let us know in the comments. Sleep well, if you can.